Let's go ahead and get going with a meeting beginning ritual, sir.
Please do.
Okay, guys. 起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位顶团师一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. Joe, we're ready to rock and roll.
Very good, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful, beautiful, warm, sunny day in Indianapolis. The Colts are playing the Tennessee Titans. We just scored our first 7 points for those of you who follow football. It's a wonderful day, again, to be here sharing in this process of studying the Tao teachings. It's always a great day when we get to do this. We started out last week on a discussion about attaining real peace. I've always felt that a big part of cultivating the Tao teachings went directly to this particular goal. How we get rid of stress, anxieties, extremes, the emotionally charged situations of life, and get to a point in our lives where we have that feeling of real, genuine, continual peace in our lives, where we're not continually struggling or agonizing or worrying over this or that or the other thing. I think this is a tremendously important set of disciplines that we can derive from the teachings, and something that I think can be beneficial to anybody who hears them. It's interesting that the collection of Tao teachings as a whole lead us down a path to a place where our lives run smoothly and skillfully, where the problems and anxieties that beset so many people in this world no longer really affect us. And the cool thing about all of this is that it's not some ethereal, miraculous, mysterious event that occurs, but rather is a series of steps in self-discipline and practice that bring us from point A to point B, from that point of living lives of random chaos and entropy to a relatively well-ordered, skillful, and stress-free life. And yet, when we talk about achieving real peace in the Tao, there is not a single verse or chapter in the Tao Te Ching that we can point at that tells us how to do that. We talk all around the subject of achieving real peace, but it is through the other disciplines that we attain real peace. And so last week we talked about the importance of living our lives with a certain amount of detachment, about not holding on to things or people or the antiquated and outdated mindsets that we tend to drag around with us, or our emotional baggage, or whatever it is. We talked about the importance of non-contention, of being accepting and tolerant of others, about getting all of the information that we can when we're involved in a relationship with another person before we render a judgment or an opinion, and the importance of exercising compassion when we deal with other people. And where we get to pick up now is kind of the next step along that road to achieving real peace, is the acquisition or development of virtue. The second half of the Tao Te Ching is devoted to that pursuit. It's the Tao Classic and the Virtue Classic. And virtue, in this case, is not the virtue of the rule of law, but rather is the natural virtue that springs forth from a rectified mind and spirit. If we cannot develop a virtuous consciousness in our lives, if we do not have a sense of integrity, a sense of shame, a sense of right and wrong, then we can never achieve peace. Because a life without a high degree of integrity and honesty and transparency is a life that usually has to wonder about what story was told to whom, where, and when. And when we're stuck, even unintentionally, in a life where we're wondering about, what we said, how what we said is going to come back around to get us, or what we did is going to come back around to get us, those things all by themselves cause a lot of stress. Every one of us, within the sound of my voice, and I would hazard to say most everybody on the planet that's of any age at all, has at some point in time or another committed some social faux pas somewhere that was so embarrassing as to be positively mortifying. I know that I have done those things, and many of them, after a couple of years worth of recovery, are humorous, and several of mine are actually quite funny. It wasn't that anybody actually wound up being permanently damaged, harmed, or injured, but it is the things where we're trying to be the most correct and the most proper that are the source of our greatest humbling experiences and humiliations. And so it takes a while for them to become funny. When we were in Taiwan, I had the opportunity to visit with Grandmaster Chenpei Tsang, which was a remarkable event. And as is the case, when you go to Taiwan, you have to get the group photo done. And so we all went out to the front of the temple to have the group photo done. And as we were preparing to leave, I took Grandmaster Chenpei Tsang's hand, and we shook hands, and I tried to bow to him politely, and he tried to bow to me at the same time, and we wound up colliding at the forehead. Now, I can talk about that now and chuckle about it, because at the time it was rather humorous, and at the time he laughed. But I wanted to crawl under a rock and die. So, those kinds of experiences cause us a lot of grief for a while, but they're not permanent. There are other experiences born of the absence of integrity and honesty, a certain amount of transparency in life, and the absence of wisdom that are permanent, or that can be extremely traumatic because they do result in other people being harmed or injured, or they wind up in a contentious and difficult relationship in which there's no trust and no peace. And so when we speak about the virtue of the Tao teachings, it is the virtue that we exercise that puts us hopefully beyond the reproach of those of us around us, and causes for us to be seen as the voice of reason in the storm, the person who's calm when everything else is in complete and utter upheaval, the ones who know what to do when no one else knows what to do. Those traits emerge from us naturally as we cultivate the Tao teachings. The collective body of that knowledge and experience is what we refer to as real wisdom. It is a quiet indwelling of strength and self-confidence that does not require the waving of banners and a big fanfare And in fact, doing those things only diminishes our credibility. And yet, people tend to naturally gravitate towards those who exhibit these traits. I find it interesting when it happens. I've also found that because I'm a really big guy, that people tend to look to me to know what to do, simply because perhaps I appear to be bigger and stronger than everybody else. I'm not sure how that works, but I have seen it happen. Fortunately, by cultivating the Tao teachings, I'm able to say when I don't know, and if I do know, we can express that in ways that are palatable and easy to digest and that don't come off sounding arrogant. When we live our lives from the point of that natural virtue, when we no longer have to worry about who we said what to and when we know that the sins and mistakes of our misspent youth have finally been settled and that karmic debt has been paid, then we take one enormous piece of anxiety and stress and worry out of our lives. It is so important that this particular set of disciplines occurs over and over again in various ways in the Tao Te Ching, in the stories of Chuang-Tzu, in the teachings of Confucius and Mencius, and in the modern day writings and teachings within the temple. The ability to be trusted and believed, to be counted upon, to have the ability to exert a certain influence to make sure that everybody's highest good is met, is a wonderful thing to be able to use. Those are skills that help to smooth the rails of social interaction and the relationships between people. And if for no other reason, they're worth the self-discipline and practice that we all should attend to those things with. Along with virtue, there comes a certain degree of selflessness. Once again, hopefully not because we're trying to feed the ego, because any kind of selflessness done from a perspective of self-aggrandizement is a waste of energy, but rather because as we begin to become more compassionate and more virtuous, we also learn that the need in the world is very, very great. The amount of suffering in the world is incalculable. I work in downtown Indianapolis, which is much smaller than downtown Los Angeles. And on every street corner in this city, there are the homeless and the destitute, and a whole new class and generation of people in trouble called the working poor, folks like myself, who actually came from relatively middle-class families, and all of a sudden a job was lost, or a death in the family occurred, or some other catastrophic event happened, and now all of a sudden here they are on the streets. The need to help others is tremendous. The need to share these teachings with others so that they too, if they have the affinity for it, can experience the same lives that we do is phenomenal. And the number of people in the West that there are available to do this work is quite small. We're not well known in the West, and we are even less well known in the Midwest of this country. Between New York and Los Angeles, there are at least a much larger population of folks from China and Taiwan than there are here. But all over the world, the need is great. America has the highest standard of living on this planet. And so when I look at the area that surrounds my office building and I think about how great this need is, I'm not thinking about that from the perspective of looking at a Calcutta or a Bangkok or a Beijing, perhaps, where there's 3 times the population and 1,000 times the need. That natural wellspring of selflessness, that kindness and gentility, that generosity that springs forth from these teachings is meant to give us the tools with which to help other people. We have to take care of ourselves and our families, absolutely. I'm not talking about giving till it hurts or until we bleed, but we all have something that we can share. And the miraculous component of this selflessness is that the more we're able to share, whatever it is that we have to share, the more able we are to receive. A person who cannot give doesn't understand giving and receiving. The door to the heart opens really wide, but it only opens one way, and that's out. Think of it, if you will, like filling the teacup. When the tea reaches the brim, that's all it'll hold. Anything you pour after that's wasted. So, to a person who only knows how to hoard and hold on, the teachings are difficult to understand. And the selflessness is difficult to do. But as we progress through the disciplines of the Tao teachings, all of this stuff seems to be brought forth on its own. It's a truly cool thing to watch. It is a really neat process to be involved in and to observe. I've been doing this now for several years. And not only has it transformed my life, but I have watched it transform the lives of others. And that's a wonderful thing. One of the other things that occurs that brings us to this point of achieving real peace is that philosophical transformation, right? We as an organization are a philosophical organization. We're not from the religious branch of Taoism. That's an entirely separate set of disciplines, and one that I do not understand real well, although I find it somewhat intriguing. From our particular philosophical bent, the changes that occur in us as a result of following these disciplines return us to a point of our true nature. The entire object of the exercise is to awaken the true self within, to bring the little Buddha inside of us out, to make our lives more closely mirror that of the Buddha. And so as we go down the path of achieving peace, we become less and less desiring of things, more desireless, less focused on the myriad things and more focused on the essence, less focused on preserving our lives and more focused on preserving the correct life. It's the process of returning to the source, which Lao-Tzu says is the essence of all things. We become more attuned to the flow of the Tao itself. We begin to understand that certain things, certain activities, certain aspects of our lives are in sync with where the flow of the Tao is going, if we want to think of it in that context, and other things are not. Not unlike swimming in the ocean, right? If one gets caught by a current and attempts to fight it, a person can drown very quickly because the ocean currents are quite powerful and will eventually overwhelm a swimmer trying to resist them. That individual will get drawn out to sea. If, on the other hand, a person can align themselves with the flow of that ocean current, eventually it will return to the land. And when it does, the person who follows that flow simply has to relax, hang on, and wait until the beach comes into view. Well, learning how to live life within the Tao teachings is not altogether unlike that very process. Every one of us is going to be doomed to make a lot of mistakes. We each have to forge that path for ourselves. But in forging that path for ourselves, we learn two things very quickly: what to do and what not to do. Typically, we learn what not to do by falling down. Every now and again, we learn what not to do by talking to somebody who's already done it and they figured out what not to do. In either case, the path brings us to that point of understanding what we should do, where we should be, and how we should act. It gives us a sense of joy and a sense of groundedness. And it's difficult to get, I've found, any other way. That philosophical transformation that occurs within us also helps us to understand other people. I'm not real sure how this works completely yet. I only know that it does. We become more perceptive to the true intentions and goals of others, to the meaning that's hidden between the lines of the words that they speak. We kind of get more sensitive to what they want and what they need. And so we're able to discern whether or not somebody is dealing with us in good faith or not. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to change how we behave, but it should absolutely change the way we understand. And because of those things, we're able to adopt a peaceful, serene, and tranquil attitude with pretty much everybody. Because we're beginning to understand the bigger picture. Because we have the ability to garner wisdom and to apply that in those situations, we're no longer stuck in the corner of not knowing what it is we don't know. All of those things help lead us to a point where we can have real peace. Right? We all have family lives, we all have work lives, we all have friends, we all know people. The better we understand others, the more focused we are on their highest good and their benefit, the more focused we are on remaining frictionless and peaceful with them, the more focused we are on not contending, not debating, not fighting, the more peaceful we become all the way around. Although I still find from time to time that when I'm driving, remaining peaceful is something of a chore. Along with that, there's the spiritual aspect of our lives. A huge part of learning to understand the Tao teachings and practicing the Tao teachings is that at some point we should become clearly aware of what our life's purpose is. I'll be very honest with you, until I encountered Derek in the temple in Los Angeles there, I thought my life's purpose lay in the Southern Baptist Church. I was on my way to become a Southern Baptist minister. That process was interrupted because I could not accept the answers that I was provided in that organization for so many things. And that's 3 or 4 talks all on that topic. But I didn't really have a better sense of answers at that time. It left an empty place in my life that I was always conscious was there, but not always able to do anything about. when I encountered Derek way on back when, heavens, that was in 1990 something, I realized that there may be a better, different set of answers there. And the more I came to know Derek, the more I came to know the temple, the more I was able to study the real teachings, the more aware I became that this was the set of answers that I was looking for. We become more sensitive to our own karmic path and to the karmic path of others. Karma is a difficult subject to wrap our heads around. And I don't ever presume to be able to unravel the web of somebody else's karma. I can't unravel my own most of the time. That web is way too complicated. There are far too many connections and way too many people to ever fully grasp the karma of another person. But what we can be sensitive to is how our thoughts and words and actions will affect another person, and how that impact on another person will affect our own karmic path. Part of having a peaceful and joyful life is in not having that instant karma come back to wreck everything that we're trying to build by following the Tao teachings. And so with that sensitivity comes the ability through practice to not wind up on the sharp, pointy end of the stick of karma. And then, of course, because of that transformation that occurs from following these disciplines, we're able to achieve that skill in living through practice and through self-discipline. So what is real peace anyway? What is it that we wind up acquiring as a result of doing this? Well, as we read through the Tao Te Ching and other teachings that are available, and from my own personal humble opinion, yeah, I've kind of laid it out here. The absence of stress and anxiety most of the time. We're not always going to be free from stress and anxiety, but if we can be free from it for a good period of our lives, that's a wonderful thing. It may be more appropriate to say it's the presence of lasting joy, with an understanding that we're secure, that we're safe, that we're not going to be injured or harmed in some way, that we have good relationships with other people, and a sound spiritual path, that our feet are grounded on the path and we know where we're going. And we have the ability to cope with life's ups and downs and not have those brief moments of either misfortune or good fortune shake us off the center, because neither of those things in any kind of an extreme fashion lasts for very long, which is the next item, the absence of extremes, moderation in all things, and being able to be content with our lot in life. Okay, these are all things that the Tao teachings bring about in our lives, and these are all things that are a reflection of that peace. So here we are at the summary again, and not much has changed from last week to this week. There still is no single chapter in the Tao Te Ching that really instructs one in how to find real peace. There are multiple chapters in the Tao Te Ching that deal with achieving tranquility, serenity, peacefulness, and the various disciplines required to get there. There are also a number of really worthwhile explanations available for some of those chapters, although I got to tell you, I have a strong preference for Derek's annotations. They're succinct, they're clear, and unlike so many, I can actually trust and believe the source there. There are some interesting translations and interpretations available on the internet. By learning and following these teachings, and by diligent practice, we can gain the skills that we need to allow us to live that life of peace and harmony. I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. I've been doing it for years. At times I didn't know it. At times I couldn't do it. And I'm still not an expert. But it's working well enough that I understand that this is the best way to go for me. Okay? And practicing the teachings, it helps transform what we gather as academic knowledge into what we have as applied wisdom. Remember, everything about the teachings that we follow here, everything about what we're trying to learn and do goes directly and specifically towards a well-ordered, peaceful, and joyous life. If we never put into practice what we learn, then it's all just words. Thank you all very much for letting me share with you. And as always, I hope this was useful or helpful for someone. Thank you all so much.